From the Black Swan Media Studios, deep inside a secret underground bunker, we're speaking to freedom-loving patriots from all around the country and the world. Welcome to the Resistance. This is John Crump, live.
We are back. It's been a tough week for the Black Swan Media family. Rich lost his father-in-law. My wife had COVID, so this is the first and last show of the week. At least we got one show out, right? We also have another video dropping on John Crump News shortly after the live stream, so stay tuned for that. We are going to be talking today to Kevin Dixie, who I'm bringing on right now. If you don't know Kevin Dixie, he is the man, the myth, the legend, also known as KD. No Other Choice Firearms, also shooting for the truth, or aiming for the truth, sorry. He's been a close friend for a long time, and a few years ago at Iraq Vet 888, I told Flying Rich to introduce me to Kevin Dixie, and Rich went to try to introduce me to Kevin Dixie, even though I already knew him. He didn't know that. It's kind of funny. Today, we're going to be talking about a serious topic, and I want to thank Dark, who looked over the footage with me and pointed something out, which I think the cop is going to use for his defense. I don't think it's going to hold water, but I think I think I know what their defense is going to be, and I don't buy it. But before we get into it, I want to show the video. But before I do that, I want to give an opportunity to Kevin Dixie to explain what exactly happened. Then we'll watch the video.
Well, since we're talking about the unfortunate shooting in Illinois with Sonya Massey, here's what we do now. I'll keep it short because I know we're about to watch it. I watched several times the 20-minute videos that are out, not just the clips. And, you know, it's alarming in many ways, right? And whenever they make entry into the home, well, first of all, let's start here. When they are outside of her home because she called because of an intruder, right? Or a potential intruder or somebody prowling around her home, right? She made a phone call. They did look around the home, the adjoining residences, up and down the public fairways. They did look into the area. They did notice a vehicle that could have or could have not been in her driveway. Depends on how that city is structured, whether your driveway is to the left or the right. They made contact with her. It did take her several minutes to come outside. She said she was trying to make herself decent. They finally made contact with her. Now, one could argue they didn't even announce Sheriff's Department when they first knocked on the door, right? And if you call because there's a prowler outside your home, you're probably not going to answer the door unless somebody does announce themselves. Well, eventually they did knock and announce Sheriff's Department. Still took her a minute to come to the door. She comes to the door. This is where it gets interesting because they did notice a vehicle had been vandalized in that driveway. It's a black Chevy SUV. It had been vandalized. Now, they didn't know when, but it had been vandalized. Driver's side window was definitely caved in. One of the rear passenger windows was damaged as well. They asked her, hey, is this your vehicle? She said no. And then she even said that somebody put it there and she doesn't know how that happened or whatever. So they let the car go. But immediately you knew something was different about her, right? We could say, you could speculate, you could say mental health, you could say medication, you could say super nerves, but she was clearly different at the moment. Not dangerous, just different. That is made obvious. And if you've never had to detain or arrest an individual, maybe you're not triggered by these type of signs, right? But you have to look for signs that somebody is not okay. That is going to guide how you interact with them, from what you say to your distance to your empathy and sympathy is going to guide a lot. Now, it does not mean you need to put yourself in harm's way. Be very clear about that. But you do, it does kind of paint a different picture. Right. So when they are making contact with her and like, okay, we're here to help you. What do you need? And she's like, oh God, please help me. Hey, what do you need? Oh, I'm fine. Oh God, please help me. That is telling you that something deeper is going on. So I would expect with that type of interaction that you would kind of soften your approach a little bit. Right. Now, Sean Grayson, this does not mean he deserves to go to prison for this part of what I'm about to say, was clearly being an asshole. Just wasn't a nice guy. But that's cool. Nobody says to do your job, you have to be nice. Okay, no problem. They make entry into the home. And upon having a conversation, she's sitting on the couch. It's a very, very tight space, right? This space, I wouldn't give it more than maybe 500 square feet. It was a 500 to 600, very, very tiny space where you only have like an island or partition separating the kitchen and the living room. When they are asking her for identification, she says, oh, I have paperwork for you. She wouldn't let the 911 dispatcher hang up the phone. She wasn't rude to anybody, though. She's very polite. Like, no, just hold on. Don't go. Ma'am, he can go. We're here. No, I need help. Jesus, help me. Jesus, help. You understand that there is something deeper going on with this lady, all right?
Yeah, and I want to get into that a little bit later after we watch the video, because I have some questions which I've been asking, not from this situation, just from this situation, but from situations with law enforcement and interaction with people with mental health for a while. I want to ask you, get into that and a little bit later. And get
okay. Oh, you mean the mental health component?
Yeah.
All right. So once they move over into the boiling water, right? That's what everybody wants to talk about, the boiling water. We have to remember that Sean Grayson gave her instructions to handle the water. Now, your partner's right there, and I don't know about you, John, but I would assume anybody over the age of 7 knows how to cut off a stove, right? So if the water was so bothersome, if the risk of fire, which is what he claimed, hey, jokingly, we don't want to fire while we're here. If the risk of fire was so great, you maintain contact with the individual. Your partner is already 3 feet from the damn stove. Hey, partner, shut that off. And, to shut the water off real quick, man, we just don't want to fire. We're going to cut the water off for you. But instead, he gave her directions to cut the water off. So now she goes over and follows directions. At this point, you see the partner make space, right? He starts to create a little distance. Why? Because it's someone that's about to handle a hot pot of water that he does not know.
Yeah, which
right? And he might be a little concerned with what he's heard before. So I'm not mad at that guy for creating space. I would have created space too, just because I don't know you. I'm going to create a little space. So she addresses that. Hey, where are you going? And he's like, hey, making room between me, you, and your boiling hot water, jokingly, but, seriously at the same time. And she rebukes him in the name of Jesus. Okay, cool. Now, to understand what she's saying is that I am basically insulted by the fact that you think I will hurt you with this water. But it takes you to culturally understand when people use that kind of language, what they are saying to you. So at that point, you can see from the second officer's body cam, immediately when she says that, and he goes, come again, Sean Grayson's hand is already on his pistol. It is already on the service weapon. Already. He's itching for a fight. It is already there. And she says it again. And he goes, you better effing not. I'll shoot you right in the face. And when he drew his service weapon, you can see both oven mitts come off the pot that was never being used in a threatening manner and go up in the air. All right, both hands up. Gun's already trained on her. All right. So he starts to close the gap. He starts to, shrink the distance between him and her, even though there's a petition in the middle, which you don't know what's behind her. So we can talk about SOP and the fact that he shouldn't have did that to the cows come home, but he shouldn't have did it. They could have created distance. It was a damn pot of water, right? You could have easily created distance and gave her commands to come from behind the counter, especially now since you see that her hands are off of the pot, right? Could have told her, come back to the living room, whatever you need to say, and whatever tone you needed to say it just to get her back over there. But he proceeded not to do that. He goes around the petition, and she does reach up and make contact with the pot of water again. Now, this is where people are saying, oh, she was trying to douse him with the water. Well, or, or, you ever had a gun pointed at your face? People are blaming her for her own death because she ducked behind the counter and the cop couldn't see what she was doing. Let me point a gun at you unprovoked and see what you do. All right.
I had a dream last night. Someone pointed an unloaded gun at me at a gun show and I ducked.
It's nerve-wracking as hell, especially when somebody's told you I will shoot you in the effing face
Yeah.
and a gun comes out, right? It's kind of, yeah, you're gonna have a reaction. Maybe yours is gonna be doing jumping jacks. Maybe yours is going into the fetal position. Maybe it's just ducking behind the counter, right? And so once she ducked, he goes around the counter. She does grab possession of the pot again. If you look at the direction of the pot, it becomes lined up more to where she can actually pour the water on herself. She has the pot with one hand. Her other hand in the mitt is kind of in a defensive posture, right? So this is where the argument, was she launching the water toward him, or was she actually trying to use the pot as some kind of covering, some kind of protective shield between her and him? Now, was the water extremely hot? Yes, you can see on the body cam footage. If you do slow it down enough, the steam was still coming off the water.
Yeah, that's what we did. We slowed it down to 0.25. That's what I was talking about. I was trying to look at it, and Dark looked at it too, and we were trying to figure out what is his defense going to be.
That is going to be that the water was hot. She could have used it as a weapon. He's going to argue that she was in motion of launching the water.
Yeah,
when he took action.
If you watch it at 0.25 on like a 130-inch screen, which I did, you can see a little bit of motion, but I honestly don't think it's enough. But I do think that that's what they're going to try to rely on. And I don't think it was enough for him to pick it up, because we had to put it up on like bigger than life screen and slow it down to 0.25. And I don't think that he could process all that at the time.
This was okay. I often tell people, never assist anybody with your murder.
Yeah.
Don't assist them with your murder. And she didn't. What he is trying to do, though, is say, look, she was in possession of this weapon, being a hot pot of water, right? And let's be clear. Can hot water hurt you? Absolutely. Yeah, it can. Can boiling hot water hurt you? Sure, it can. But, however, he put himself in a position to be within range of the water.
Yeah.
And he did that intentionally.
Do you want to take a look at the video now?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
What do you want help with?
Huh?
What do you want help with?
I heard somebody outside.
Yeah, we checked your house. We checked your backyard. I walked all the way through all these backyards. We checked your front yard.
You know what I want?
Let's see if they show the actual.
Yeah.
I had the wrong video pulled up. Sorry, guys.
Kill the wrong one.
All right, let me pull up the right video. Sorry, I've had multiple videos pulled up.
No, you're right.
I'll find it. But yeah, it was definitely a. I've been doing a lot of research into this. So, I'll put this one on.
Records from his time at the Logan County Sheriff's Office include recordings of supervisors reprimanding.
There's better videos out there, but since I pulled up the wrong video, I'm going to have to find it. Sorry about that, guys.
He now former police.
But just to let you guys know, she ducked down, and when she popped back up, and she did invoke the name of Jesus for some reason, he pulled out a gun and shot her in the face. A couple questions I have for you, Kevin, is should he have went to like some non-lethal type of thing before he went to the firearm? Whether it's
the non-lethal thing is the non-lethal weapon that he had at his disposal was called distance.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, if he was equipped with a taser, could he have used the taser? Yeah, people will say, whoa, it's water around. That's not my concern. If I really think you're a threat, I can use a non-lethal. If he had OC spray, he could have used that as well. there were options. This was an example of an individual. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's add this. Now, I'm still not saying hot water is not a weapon. Forget the fact of everything I said, or the fact that he could have gave her commands from 12 feet away to say, hey, put down the pot, don't pick it back up, walk around the corner, come back here in this living room, hands up, mitts off, handcuffs, right? Could have did all that. You could have actually backed to the front door. Your back was to the front door, so you guys had a way out if you thought she was that scary and dangerous. So to answer your ultimate question, yes, John, he had plenty of less than lethal and non-lethal options to use in that situation. He chose to use deadly force. He chose to shoot her in the face.
Yeah, I got the footage now. I found the footage. Sorry, I had the actual like uncut footage, but I don't know what I did with it.
Show your face. Park the jump. Park. 14 shots fired. Jump fired.
Not long after Grayson shot her, the other deputy says, I'm going to go get my kit, his medical kit, to which Grayson responds, no, it's a headshot. She done. Grayson, who was fired last week, is pleading not guilty to several charges, including.
It's like almost that he like was like proud of it.
He has no humanity. And see, this is the problem with a lot of, ego and tough guys, right? Like, and we see it even in the Second Amendment. We see a little bit too much of the celebratory nature of death, right? Like it's not truly to be celebrated in that way. That guy was like, all right, like that shit was Call of Duty, man. Just nope, headshot. And here's the crazy thing about it. Okay, let's argue from a place saying, hey, don't waste my, $200 med kit because it's a headshot she's done. The second officer, a short time there later, goes into the kitchen, grabs a towel off of the countertop, and tries to use it as a pressure gauze, right? He's trying to, apply pressure. You can hear her several times. And he even states she's still breathing. You can hear her. You still didn't want to go get your med kit until 3 or 4 minutes later, and he took his slow ass time going to get it then, right? That guy is not a human. He's not a humane person. Because you have seen plenty of times, there are plenty of videos of people that have had to do unfortunate things to individuals, and they still try to render aid afterwards, let alone a law enforcement officer who just did the crazy thing he did, and then it's like, she's breathing, but let's not waste my med kit. It's a headshot. It's done. Because nobody's ever survived a headshot before, right? Ever. So that's why it amazes me that people from all angles, that people are trying to defend this guy. He's truly a piece of shit. He really is. And it amazes me too. We have victims that whenever we look at these high profile cases that are involving cops, we tear the victim. You have to be the perfect victim. You have to fit every box. You have to be the perfect victim. And in order for society to even say, I don't know, right? But we never make sure it's the perfect cop. And in this particular situation, when we started digging into Sean Grayson's past, found a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah,
right.
He's went like been fired 4 times or something like that.
Yeah, Sean Grayson, and he worked for 6 law enforcement agencies in 4 years. And if you don't understand how miraculous that is, that's a lot. Worked for 6 agencies in 4 years. He got hit with DUI twice, and he was pretty much less than honorably discharged from the armed forces. So
yeah,
I am looking for, and I'm sorry, at the Logan County Sheriff's Department, there's the interview is out now, the audio is out, where his former chief at the Logan County Sheriff's Department was interviewing him about violating the department's pursuit law. And it wasn't the fact that he violated the policy, right? Because things happen. You violate policy sometimes. That's what write-ups are for. No, he lied about it. And the chief is saying, if I can't, you can hear him on audio, like, if I can't trust and believe that you're going to tell me what you see, I can't have you wearing my uniform. I am questioning your integrity. And voila, this guy's integrity is definitely called into question in this Sonya Massey shooting, and you still have people trying to defend him. And it's now his defense attorney team, that's their job. They're going to do their job, right? They're going to try their damnedest. That's what they get paid for. What I'm looking at is just how any citizen of this country can be okay watching that video of another American citizen that invoked the name of Jesus being killed in their household in that manner, and you're trying to make excuses for it. That is an unbelievable situation. And when I see people that are supposed to represent the 3% doing that, I'm like, no, you're really kind of the 97. You might want to change the sticker on your truck.
Yeah, let me ask you something here. It seems like in our other podcast, we do a podcast. We try to do it once a week. We've been off this week because of the situations we all been in, but it's called Uncensored over on Rumble. And one of the episodes we did was Thin Blue Line versus All Cops Are Bastards. And basically what we talked about is you have these two diametrically opposed positions where the truth, and I know aiming for the truth, right?
Yeah.
Truth is usually somewhere in the middle where not you have bad cops, you have good cops.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like in society, they're either all bad or all good. Mm-hmm. There's no middle ground. And I think we need to realize that it's not a like zero-sum game. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray there where you're going to have some cops that will do their job and they want to help the community. But you do have a proportion, and I would say probably a bigger proportion than in a lot of other professions where I think the power kind of goes to their head. But do you agree that there's like these two polar opposite positions and both sides are not willing to admit that there are good cops or there are bad cops?
Yeah, because both sides are like mean girl clubs, right? It's if you don't 100% agree with my team, if you're not a purist, then you're on the other side, right? It's no different than politics in that way. So are there good cops? Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you, when I was a 21-year-old kid coming from the environment I came from and took a job with the PD, it was to get like manly advice and life coaching skills that all came from primarily cops, right? Like that's who I was around. It was such a good environment for me to learn how to be a man, right? I met a ton of great men and women of all sorts that were great people, right? And I'm like, and to this day, there are some of those people that if I see them on the street, I will almost squeeze the life out of them, giving them such hugs because they helped me be such a good person, right? Kept me balanced. I've watched cops come out of their pockets. I've watched cops feed the homeless. I've watched cops and I'm not talking about doing great things on the clock. I'm talking about being good people without the badge on, right? Just being awesome human beings. I know plenty, right? Know plenty of them. I also, at the same time, working for that same PD, had to process some of our own officers because they were involved in drug rings, prostitution, theft. We had a car scheme going on where cops were helping steal citizens' cars. Our chief of police had to retire because of scandal. I also watched my chief of police when I was 13 years old. Didn't know I was going to be working for the PD. I had no idea he was going to be chief. But I watched him when I was 13 years old steal drugs and dope money from the dope house across the street. I watched it. I was sitting on my front porch. I watched him do it, right? And then 8 years later, this guy's the chief of police of my department. I watched you rob the dope men, right? So you're not convincing me that they're all good. You're also not going to convince me that they're all bad, right? I have myself been pulled over and got breaks. I myself have been pulled over with a shit ton of guns in the car and did not have a problem. It does not mean that somebody else got pulled over and wasn't treated wrong. It does not mean somebody else got pulled over and had a shit ton of guns in the car and their Second Amendment rights weren't violated. So we can't take all our own little experiences and be like, oh no, they're all good because all your experiences were good. Or they're all bad because maybe all your experience, they're a human beings. That's what they are. They're human beings. And so what we have to get to is saying, hey, that I am a human. Whether I ever worked for a law enforcement agency or not, you can look at that video of Sonya Massey. It doesn't take somebody with a doctorate to look at that and say that was wrong. It just doesn't, right? You can be an 8th grade kid and say, no, that was just wrong. And we have to be okay with doing that. But the side that are so pro-police are like, well, no, I got to back cops at every angle for every reason and everything, or I have to cast doubt. Well, let's see how the trial plays out. You know, that kind of, I'm going to just live in innuendos, right? So I'm not really picking a side. I'm going to say that looks bad, but I'm just going to kind of float out here in the gray space when you see something that's obviously wrong. That's why your credibility is shot when it comes to people and you're saying all cops are good. They're like, you can't even admit when it's egregious.
Yeah, but like in this case, I kept my mouth shut until I saw the body cam footage. I'm like, what they said, it could be something different. Once I saw the body cam footage, I'm like, all right, time to open my mouth. Now I have enough information to form an opinion. But I think a lot of people are not new or do not look for the nuance in each situation. Each situation is different. You can't use the situation. And I think this situation, I think it's pretty clear what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, he murdered an American citizen in her home. That was not a justifiable homicide. He murdered a woman who rebuked the demon living in him, and he decided to take her life because of it. And what's sickening to me is the fact that, and I put this even on Instagram. Okay, so her weapon was a hot pot of boiling water. Okay? What do me? Well, it's a rhetorical question. Me, you, and probably everybody watching, I'm pretty sure we all, own 2-3 guns, right? So with all the
I might own a little bit more than 2 or 3.
I'm trying to not put our information out to the feds.
You've been in my house.
I know the feds watch you. I'm trying not to,
Yeah, I'm sure they know exactly what I have.
So what happens when we get that red flag called on us? What happens when they have a reason to be at our door, right? And so if you're excusing that behavior of a slaughter of an American citizen in her home with a pot of water, remember that when they show up to your door and you have guns. Because if we all just go, hey, you know what? John had a gun. He should not have wore the blue pants that day and got on his knees so fast. He should have wore his red pants that day. And then he should have slowly raised his hands up. Nope. The reason they shot John is because John went straight up. But they saw the videos of him doing appendix carry, so they got scary. So John really should have balled his fist and raised them 45 degrees to the right. Like, people are excusing the police because they have split seconds to respond, but then are accusing the citizens of their death because they didn't respond appropriately within those same split seconds, right? Down to the nuance that cop might have wanted. So for me, the alarming part is people that are approving of an American citizen being slaughtered in our home in such a way, and then having the nerve to scream, there's pros 2A and 3%ers. Well, the last time I checked, it was the 97% that was okay with the British law enforcement and the British Empire doing what they wanted to do in the U.S., not necessarily the 3. And I also don't understand why people have lost their humanity behind any job. I don't give a damn what you do or how good you are at it. If you do something wrong, I'm going to tell you, you could go rescue children every day from sex trafficking. And that is an honorable job to go do that. Honorable. But then if you turn around and molest a kid, you saved 1,000 and you molest 1, I'm going to hold you fully accountable for that 1 child you molested. Fully accountable for that.
You don't build up like credit.
Right. They got a hell of a job to do. He probably did a lot of good in the past. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You don't get to say, hey, man, I did 7 good deeds. Now let me go murder somebody and we all should just get over it.
Yeah, a certain person made the trains run on time, but we don't forget him for all the bad stuff he did, right? Putin had an interesting question. Do you think it's because a lot of these people, they come into it and they're good people, but they are exposed to a lot of scumbaggery that they see and it just kind of changes them.
So I'm going to say this, but it's also not an excuse. But it is also part of the human factor because once again, we're dealing with human beings. To be in a job where you have to deal with other people's problems for a living, and they are giving you their ass to kiss on a regular basis. They're not always being the nicest to you. You are responsible for something. Somebody wears a uniform 1,000 miles from you, and if they do something questionable, it hits the news, everybody treats you like a piece of shit, right? You still got your own life stressors to go through, whatever those things may be. You're maybe not paid the most. You have to work 2-3 jobs a lot of times to make ends meet. So yeah, and then people test you. People will absolutely test you if they think that you're in a position of authority, and a cop is no different. They are going to push your buttons. They are going to test you, and you're going to have to deal with that 8 to 12 hours a day. You're going to have to do that, right? Sometimes you're working 7 to 10 days in a row, until those rec days hit. Then you might get 3, and you're back on for 5. Then you might be off for 2, and then you're back on for 8. Like, it's a lot to deal with, right? And then you add in the fact that your command staff might not appreciate you. You add in the fact that you helped 15 people last week and not one of them said thank you. You go through a lot. I will absolutely give cops that. You go through a lot. It's a lot to affect a human being, which is why I think more of them need to be in therapy. Starters, right? People say training. Well, if the machine is broke, I don't know what you're training, right? They need to be in a lot more therapy. But here's the thing: all those things are true. All those things are true, and we need to acknowledge those things. So if a first responder says, "I need help," we probably should make sure they have the avenue to get the help that they need, because that's important. However, you chose the job.
Yeah, but
it's not like you can't draft people into law enforcement, right?
But that's why I wanted to go in a little bit of mental health, because I think there's a 2-part facet to this. One, I think anyone in a high stress job like law enforcement or anything, that's going to weigh heavily on your psyche, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is this stigma about therapy. And I'm a big proponent of therapy. I've been to therapy multiple times for years. But there's the stigma of, oh, you shouldn't seek therapy. And I think more people would benefit from therapy, including and especially people in like law enforcement, military, or anything that's very high stress that you're dealing with certain people like that. And it seems like you would agree with that.
Let me be very, very honest. My next therapy appointment is tomorrow. Like, I see a therapist regularly.
Yeah, so do I.
And there is nothing wrong with it. So the stigmatism of it is a thing. I think we're doing better at that, though. I think we're getting a little bit more used to people opening up and saying, yes, it's okay to, call therapists, counselor. I call them professional friends, whatever the case may be, to go out there and talk. And in those jobs, I do think there should be time carved out. And here's the crazy thing: I think it should be paid time. I think if the cop or anybody in a high stress position like that needs to go talk to someone, I think it should be paid. I think they should be able to do it and be on the clock when they go do it, so they don't have to feel like they're losing something by going to do it. I do think that we need to pay more attention to that. At the same time, they have a command staff too, right? So in those positions, so you have to be able to do more than just bark orders at your officers. Are you looking at how Officer Smith has been acting the last couple of days? Does he or she seem off? Have you pulled them in to have a conversation? Or are you, watch commander, just throwing more and more crap on them? You don't have any personal development skills with them. You guys, you don't know how to build a team. You don't know how to build camaraderie. So you don't know how to observe and people watch unless they're a perp. But you have people losing their minds right up under your watch, and you aren't seeing it because you're just so perp focused. So yeah, I think that they should absolutely get more access to mental health, because I don't want to see any more Sonya Masseys. I don't want to see that.
I think we're on the same page, because that brings me to the next point, which you just brought up. So now you brought up 2 of the 3 points out of our mental health, and that is training for senior staff, and actually all staff. I don't think it should be just limited to senior staff, but all staff, on how to recognize people in crisis or people that are going through something. And I don't think that they train, hey, you should look out for this.
Yeah, they absolutely need to, and everybody should have some sort of ability. But another thing I don't give. No, look, I'm sorry. I don't give an excuse for a beat cop not to be able to pick up on people that are acting a little different, right? So, for example, there's this guy named Gary. I'm not going to say Gary's last name, but he's just a guy I remember, right? When I was back at the PD, Gary got locked up a lot. Gary wasn't necessarily a small man. He was a bigger guy, 5'11". So he wasn't that tall, but Gary was about 230, 240. You know what I'm saying? So he had a little girth to him. And Gary was an individual that always, I lost count how many times Gary told me he was going to kill me. I just lost count. I lost count. Gary told me he was going to kill me a lot. I encountered Gary on the streets once when I went over to work for one of the local universities after I left the PD. And I'm over there and I get a phone call about a crazy guy threatening to hurt the students of the campus. But he was on, one of our public access streets. So I get over there and I recognize him immediately, right? So the officer I'm with, I'm like, I got it. Let me take a lead on it. Gary. And Gary is threatening people with an ink pen. That's his weapon of choice that day is an ink pen. But I also know Gary never got locked up without having a pocket knife. He always had a knife, always had a little pocket knife. So I know Gary's got a knife somewhere. He just chose to threaten people with a pen this day. Gary, what are you doing? I'm going to kill you. He got his pen in his hand. I'm about 11, 12 feet away from Gary, right? All right. And we've spaced out to make sure we have reactionary room in case this is the day Gary wants to lose his shit, right? Gary, you can't be threatening people. I need you to calm down. I'm not going to calm down. I'm going to kill you. Gary, can you kill me after we get something to eat? Because I'm really hungry. Well, yeah, what you want to eat? You have to be able to pick up things about people. And then you know what? I gave Gary, now I'm not saying that you have to do this. I gave Gary $2 because he was homeless and crazy. I said, Gary, here's $2. They got sandwiches over there. It was a Rally's across the street. They had 79-cent burgers. This is back when you can actually afford food. They had 79-cent burgers. Gary, going over there, get you something to eat. Gary walked his happy, crazy ass across the street, got him something to eat, and went on about his evening. I didn't have to shoot Gary because I understood how to read Gary. Any street cop that has been around, like, you know how to read when somebody's just wrong. No different than me and you. You don't need training, John. If we pull up to a guy and we're out and we're having a conversation with a guy in front of Walmart and he is different, we don't even have to have training to go, something ain't right. Person's a little wonky. So yeah, they need to have more training, but the training should be focused on identifying and dealing with, right? How do you actually deal with people like that, right? What verbal judo did he use?
And there's my third question. So we're on the same page. Yeah, the training. I do think that dealing with mental illness training is lacking, especially when it comes to law enforcement. And I don't know why that is, but I think that needs to change.
Well, I will say, now it doesn't mean these are excuses, but budgets are tight for sure. Budgets are tight in many departments. Can be a logistical nightmare to rotate everybody through training and keep people on the streets, especially when you're already cash strapped. That is a thing, right? It's the same thing corporate America experiences, except these people got a lot more responsibility. But you got to get creative. You might have to do some Zoom calls where when people are off work, you can do a Zoom meeting. You got to do something to help people. But here's the other thing, and it's not taken away from the mental health aspect, because I think no matter what you do in life, that is very important. I don't put cops, and people get mad at me for this all the time, I don't put cops above John or above anybody in the chat. They are human beings. I don't look at people and say, because of the job you do, your life is worth more than anybody else's, right? I don't. I think a cop has the same life value as a teacher. A teacher's value is the same as a plumber's, right? We all have value in our life, right? So when I'm looking at that, it's like, guys, yes, you need to do what you need to do to be the best you can be to do your job and take care of yourself. I don't want you hurting citizens. I don't want you eating your own gut. I don't want chaos for you in your life because you are a human being and you have value. Just because you wear a badge, I don't believe you're Superman, right? But I'm also not addicted to heroism. So you're a human being. Let's help the human being be better. But something else we got to realize too is that a lot of departments don't want to help their guys, right? You when they start looking at money, you got chiefs that are eating, you know, 6.5 figures easy every year. They're not helping their officers out. They're not getting those guys support. They're still making them roll one-man cars, overworked, you know, and then they have the nerve to throw them under the bus whenever politics gets involved. Hey, you should have zigged when you zagged over here. And I'm not going to take the hit because, you know, I work for the mayor. So the mayor's mad at me and now I'm mad at you. So that's the way it goes. So it is a constant dumping on the street cop. I will absolutely give that, but you still chose the job and you still have a level of accountability and responsibility. And when you think those things have become too much, you need to take some PTO or you need to go ahead and turn in your badge and gun and walk away because that would be the responsible thing to do.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. And okay, in the movies, there's always a good guy and a bad guy. But in real life, it's more of what I call the Tiger King situation, where there is no good guy. So like the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd thing, right? George Floyd had a criminal record.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Chauvin also killed George Floyd.
Mm-hmm. But
people excuse Derek Chauvin because George Floyd was probably, it was not too good of a person. He wasn't like an outstanding member of society. So like, oh, so it seems like a lot of people look at it and instead of saying, hey, you know, that since one guy's bad, the other guy must be good. Or do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize that you can have two guys that, or one guy that's done a lot of bad stuff and one guy that's done a lot of good stuff, but doesn't preclude the one guy that's done a lot of good stuff from doing bad stuff to the bad guy.
Yeah, I think that is, although your observation is correct, I think the fact that you have to make it is, it shows the level of stupidity we've reached in society. Because, yes, George Floyd was not a good, if you just read the paper, not a good person.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody with any sense has said that. Now, there also was a part of George Floyd that we saw Facebook posts and some videos of him where he was out trying to encourage people not to make the same mistakes he was making in life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He was involved in a couple of community outreach programs. But if you read that, just his arrest record, you would say he wasn't a good person, but he was a person still trying to do good things. Now,
yeah, but that's what I'm saying is people concentrate on the bad stuff and like, oh, well, this cop did something to a guy with a criminal record.
Yeah, let's cut the shit. They are trying to make sure that because somebody screamed it was done to him because he's black, they wanted to say no, it's not because he's black, it's because he's worthless and black. That's that we cut right through the bullshit. They were looking for any reason to get to a point to say that black man should not be martyred. He should not be spoken up for because you don't want to say this is the black guy that you want to defend. Just like Botham John had to be defended against having a small amount of personal use marijuana in his apartment when Amber Geiger shot him and she went into the wrong damn place. Whenever it is a black victim, they are going to have their history scrutinized heavily. So it was more about look at this cop that killed this thug. And we know what thug has replaced in modern society. It's another word it took the place of. So that's what we were seeing. It's like, look at this guy. We need to validate the fact that his life is worthless. And then when you look at the optics, oh, white cop kills black man. Oh, well, let's tear this black guy apart. So then we turn this into a racial discussion and you get people more distracted about trying to defend the fact that, yeah, we just watched this dude snuff this man's life out on camera over the course of 7 to 9 minutes, but we're going to get so caught up in a racial discussion because that's where people want to lead it. No, but the fact of the matter was society turned it into, we are going to make excuses for this white cop that killed this black man because we don't want to validate that black people got a point.
Well, how do we get to the point where we just look at the situations instead of being tribal.
Well, shit. Now you're talking about training people back to their youth, right? I think that people that live in nuance can see a thing. Like, I can see somebody do something screwed up and understand why you take it from the perspective you take it based off your lived experience in life, right? Okay, so let's use the Second Amendment for an easy example. John gets red flagged, right? If you get red flagged, and I don't really know anything about guns, right? That's not really my thing. And I say, okay, John and his people are really upset that he got hauled out in handcuffs and the cops took his guns, right? And I'm like, well, if you were a danger to yourself, John, why, or a danger to other people, why are you mad because they came to prevent you from doing something crazy? And then you're going to defend yourself. You're going to say, I'm not a threat. This person was just mad at me. They have no constitutional right to do what they did, right? We're going to go through the whole thing. Well, my perspective, because I don't know anything about that, is going to be like, oh, okay, well, now you're mad too. So now you're just a nut job, and I'm glad they took your guns, right? Versus being able to say, well, I might not like guns, but did they violate his constitutional rights?
Yeah,
Because I'll be pissed too. But people don't have that kind of ability to really look at something and say, let me see it from your perspective, because we're too busy talking at than listening to.
Yeah.
So until we get that together, we're not.
I think my autism prevents me from not being nuanced, you know?
Well,
I don't know, because I just can't understand why people can't do that, but that's just me. We do have a question. What's your take on cops don't become psychopaths, psychopaths become cops?
well, that's been going around for a while. To me, I get the point, right? And can a psychopath absolutely start to use law enforcement to do certain things to the populace? Yeah. So I see the point of the statement, right? I mean, we could break it down into more nuance, but I see the point of the statement. If I am a psychopath and I want to cause chaos and havoc and make people uncomfortable, I'm also psychopathic enough to pass lie detector tests and go through your medical screenings and go to your psychologist and pass those tests too, and go and take the academy and get a job. So, yeah, I mean, psychopaths have no limit to what they will do to get their way. So I can't argue with it, because that'll be like saying there are no psychopaths that are cops, and that would just be absolutely false.
One of the professions that have like the greatest number of psychopaths are actually CEOs.
I mean, it kind of makes sense when you know that every business, if you gave a business a personality characteristics, they're all narcissists. So every business has to be a narcissist. So it kind of makes sense that they will be psychopaths.
Yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Kind of makes sense.
But I don't think all cops are psychopaths.
No, all cops aren't psychopaths.
Even the vast majority of cops are not psychopaths.
No. Now, if that was the case, we would have we'll be having a whole different kind of conversation. I just think that when it comes to cops, treat them like humans. Treat them like humans. And if they're wrong, they're wrong. And you got to think about it like this too, man. If I'm trying to, let's say, save the Second Amendment, right? And it's 100 2A guys and girls in this room. And then this one person, is just nuts. They are going around flagging people with their guns, and they are just doing everything unsafe. They are what we don't like, right? But they represent us. And the other side is looking at us saying, oh, well, that guy seems to be a little dangerous. He just pointed that AR at your face. I'm like, oh, how cool does my muzzle brake look, right? At that point, I would advise us to cut that poison off. Yo, no, you get out the room. We don't want you in here. So now it's 99 of us because we kicked that one out, right? So we can have a conversation with the other side without this one being the example. But when it comes to people that are loyalists to cops, they aren't willing to give up even one of them. So even if you are the poison to us, we are going to hold on to you which now has brought the entire reputation of everything that they do down. Right? When you look at the numbers of people, I remember when it used to be hard to become a cop. Like, it wasn't, the interview process was like, you would have guys sitting at home for like 2-3 years waiting on the call back. Unless your uncle, nepotism kicked in, right? Unless something like that was a part of it, you would have guys waiting a long time, and I mean, you had everything had, because they had the pick of the litter. The police departments could pick whoever they wanted. Now, oh man, please, do you have a pulse? We'll take you.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think that, because you have to admit that there is a sizable anti-cop movement now, and do you think that plays into the lack of people wanting to go into law enforcement that you didn't have in the past?
Yeah, I think they understand that I'm not going to be in a profession where society generally loves me now, right? And here's another thing, and only because I've talked to a couple of guys that were on the fence about going law enforcement or going military, and they were like, you know what? I don't want to be some political figure's sacrificial lamb. And that's a real scare, right? Like, do you want to be in one of those gray area situations, right? Where it's like, man, this could have really went either way. This is a hard one to call, right? And now you understand that depends on the politics at play. You could just be a sacrificial lamb, right? Do you want to take that risk? So I can understand why the numbers are down. I really can, and not including the pay. Somebody thought I was crazy when I said it, but I'm like, really think about it, man. Like, you could go be a cop for, I don't know, 40, 50, maybe not. Well, unless you live in a place that I guess pays a lot of money, but starting off somewhere between 40 and 45K, you can do that as a 22-year-old kid, or you can sit at home and make TikTok videos.
Yeah,
you can figure out how to become an influencer. Why would you want to do that?
I spent a lot of time in Suffolk County, New York, which is in Long Island, and it's still hard to become a cop there, but because their pay is like in the high six. I mean, like, it's like starting out, you're going to get a 6-figure salary, and within 5 years, you're going to be making $200,000. It's the highest paid law enforcement in the country, and it's really hard to get a job there. But that's like the exception to the rule,
right?
Yeah, they get majorly.
We're down here, man. I'm in. I moved from Missouri down to Georgia, and it was the same thing in Missouri before I left. But even down here, like, you can't ride down a major thoroughfare without seeing some sheriff's department or some law enforcement agency like, please come work here. Throwing signing bonuses at you. Like, they just need help.
Yeah, I agree. But a lot of places are having a hard time hiring cops, and I think that might actually play into certain people going there. So it used to be a position that was like looked up to, and I don't think that's the case. So how would you fix that?
Well, you start off by bringing respect back to the profession. And I think that when you have a easy situation like this Sonya Massey situation, you let people know, and to that county sheriff, he has come out and said that they have to do better. He did say that, right? So he's owning it. And I think that public accountability is what's going to help start it off, right? Like, taking public accountability and giving people respect. And I also think that although risky, but it's a risky job, we have to really get back to what community policing is, right? Like, you should know people that if you're going to be the the law enforcement or authority figure over these people's neighborhoods, you should try to know them. You just should try to know them, right? Have a little interaction with them, have a little grace with them. One of the things that I noticed growing up as a kid is that when I was in the suburbs, I went out there for a year just to go to a different school, and mom tried to, get us out of the hood for a second, and we did good for a year or two before we had to go back. And that cop in the county, in the suburbs, pulled up. I'm a 7-8-year-old kid, I think, at the time, and got out and gave us baseball cards with stale gum. But while he was standing there, he also asked, "How are you doing in school?" And he wrote down all our first names and our current grades and what we said. And every couple of months, he would still get out his car. He would, even sit on our bikes and say, "I should steal your bike or I should take it from you. What are your grades looking like? Okay, you did good. Here's some more baseball cards." And from talking to us, he started talking to our parents. And so it was just, I'm not saying you can do that now, but you can do a form of that, right? Community engagement, community policing, and start letting them know you. Because if the only time I see you is if you're getting out barking orders at me, I'm not going to have a high regard or respect for you. I'm probably going to have a lot of fear for you, because every time I see you, it means it's bad news. Either something bad is happening to me and I'm trying to get it to stop. And if I'm not a person that calls 911 a lot, when you show up, because I got pulled over or somebody else called the cops on me, so your presence is always negative. When have I had just a, "Hey, Miss Rose, how are you doing today?" Every interaction with you is negative. And so that's not going to help. And if we're going to try to get more kids to want to be cops, we got to convince their parents that it's okay to talk to their kids about a law enforcement career, not the kids. Because can you imagine a parent telling a kid from 10 to 18, "Don't be a cop, don't be a cop, don't be a cop, don't be a cop"? They're not going to be a cop. All right. So we have to get back to community policing. I think that's the start of it. And just be fucking nice to people, man. All right. You don't have to get out with your chest swole all the time. Be nice to people. You can still give somebody a ticket by being nice to them. You absolutely can. You can still do your job by being kind to people. I just watched a great example of professionalism from a law enforcement agency. I want to say it was the Jacksonville Police. It might have been the Tampa Sheriff's Office, though. But either way, in Florida recently, there's a rapper who was just executed. The video's gone viral. He got ambushed at a hotel and executed. And they caught his name was something Fulio, but they caught him, and the guys shot and killed him. Well, they did their job, and they figured out who killed him. And they surrounded this house, and these guys, were professional. They got all the suspects out the house, gave them very strict direct commands and pouring rain, but professional, but they weren't mean to them. Their job was fugitive apprehension. They apprehended the fugitives, transported them where they needed to go, and left. Right? So you can do your job. You don't have to be an asshole while doing it, because you can't be an asshole and then expect the community to have your back.
Yeah.
A lot of nuance. It's not one answer.
Yeah. Final question. What do you think about the militarization of police? Do you think it's over militarized or?
Man, I got to be okay. So here's my thing with that. I got to be honest about this. It's hard for me. Okay, so let me look at it from this side. When you're looking at it from the law enforcement side, you have to look at whatever I encounter in the street. I got to be able to at minimum match, right? Which is why we saw people, law enforcement agencies, going from 38 revolvers to semi-automatic pistols, right? I got to be able to match. Now, to say that they're over militarized to someone like me, but when we say we should have everything that we need to fight against the government, then I'm recognizing the type of firepower that I want access to. Well, then the street cop still has to deal with the fact that he might encounter that. So how are they equipped to deal with it? So it's really hard for me to say yes because of that perspective. Will I say from this perspective that they're spending a lot of the taxpayers' money, and the taxpayers should be very concerned about why we have a Bearcat and we only have a county of 700 people? Yeah, you should be curious why you got a $300,000 truck and 700 people live in the county. Yeah, I think you should, right? So the monetary gains that are spent, I think, are a problem. And if you are not just over militarized as far as your gear, it's your actions we should have a problem with, not your gear, right? It's not the gear, it's your actions, right? So if you are out, in I don't know, executing no-knock search warrants when they shouldn't be happening, but you're doing it behind, now we got bullet resistant bobcats and all kind of stuff, and you're knocking down doors and you're doing that, you got the equipment, you want to go out and play with your toys, then maybe that's a concern. But it's really hard for me to say an absolute, just because our argument is I should have whatever the government has. And then from a cop's perspective, they're going to be like, well, I got to be able to match whatever I meet in the streets. So it's, it's interesting.
I gotcha. It's just a question that I myself struggle with sometimes. And I don't think it's an easy answer either.
It's not. It's really not. I always say that comes down to how the taxpayers in that particular city or county feel about what equipment our cops have, right? And then that's for the powers to listen to their citizens and discuss. But how I can't. It's hard for me to get with that argument because the anti-freedom side always says we have too much stuff, right? Like, so it's kind of like, let's be careful there. Let's be careful.
Yeah, we definitely have to be careful and not apply anti-freedom stuff to whatever. But that's definitely something that happens. But I agree with you on the community policing thing. I do think that we need more community policing, and I don't think that we really have community policing, which in a lot of places. Some places we do, but a lot of places we don't. And I think that's a problem. There's a guy on Instagram who's a cop called Kickflips and Donuts.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a cop, but he does a lot with the skateboarding community and kids. And, he's a skater, but he does a lot with kids and goes out and meets these kids that are, that might be in danger, I guess you can say. I don't know. But he's done a lot of good in the community by just knowing the kids' names. He'll go out, he'll like do a kickflip or a skateboard with them or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that brings a lot of trust to the community. It's just like I saw a video a while ago of some lady was calling the cops on the kids playing basketball. So the cops came out and they ended up playing basketball with the kids.
Oh yeah, I saw that one. Yep, I saw that video. Yeah. It's a couple of good guys out there too. One guy is I've actually spoken at a conference of his, Breaking Barriers United, I think is his Instagram page, Ryan, and then Oh No, It's the Popo. These guys are putting in a lot of their personal time to have these outreach platforms where they're trying to humanize the badge, right? It'd just be great if the powers to be would actually power that, where these guys aren't having to do it in their off days and taking all their own money and traveling on their own dime. It'd be nice if these agencies will get out there and do that. I've been living I've been living where I've been living for 4.5 years now. I've only spoken to a cop once. Outside of me going to the police department for various things, I've only actually spoken to a cop once when they drive them down the street. Once. And you know what that once was? Very interesting. I was sitting with my garage door up. And because I had my garage door up, I had an AR. It was tucked. Like you had to be at a certain angle to be able to see the AR. And just so happened, this cop pulls up. They're going to a call, across the street from me or something. And they pull up in front of my driveway. And they kind of block my driveway. But I don't care. I'm not going anywhere. So the guy gets out his car and walks around the front of his vehicle. Doesn't say anything to me. Like, first of all, at least say, hey, man, we'll be right back. Like, we're not going to, block your driveway forever. They go in, they handle their call. I'm thinking nothing of it. I'm still sitting outside. Now, when he comes back, he's going to come at an angle where he can see my AR, right? That stage. And I'm sitting there. He comes around the corner, and he starts walking at a slower pace. He looks at me. I look at him. He looks right at the gun. I look back at him, and he says, have a great evening, sir. I said, you too. Be safe. And he gets in his car and leave. But that is the only time I have had interaction, but they drive them down the street all the time, right? So it's like, after seeing me for 2 years, hey, man, just see you a lot coming outside. My name's Officer Johnson. Just wanted to speak. Hey, man, how you doing? My name's Kevin. Nice to meet you. Oh, yeah, you live right here? Yep. These are my vehicles right here. All right, man. Well, if If I ever see something spooky, I'll let you know. But hey, here's my card. If you ever see something you kind of want to just call and let me know about it, give me a call. Cool, man. Like, it's really simple. It's really simple. And yeah, are you going to meet some jerks that are going to be like, I don't want to talk to you? Well, yeah, but you're going to meet jerks when you show up to arrest them too.
That is true.
Right.
That is true. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I wanted to do this because I saw your post on Instagram and I was like, you know what? I really agree with this. So let's go ahead and get him on so we can talk about it.
I appreciate you inviting me on.
And I think it goes to show that, you know, that there's nuance in the conversation. And one of the reasons why I like to have you on is because, you know, the nuance part. Tell everyone where they can find you at.
Okay, so I'm doing this YouTube thing because I've been getting yelled at about it. All right, so the Real NOC on YouTube. I do have videos up there. One just dropped yesterday. You should go check it out. It's how a 4570 actually broke my heart. I think it's a good video. You should go check it out. Other great content over there be coming out every week with more stuff. So that's the Real NOC on YouTube. You can also find me at the Real_NOC on Instagram, and it's the Real NOC on Facebook. So everything's the Real NOC. You can also head over to nootherchoice.com. That's nootherchoice.com if you want to check out our training schedule. I am a firearms coach. So if you want to get involved in some training, it'd be great to have you. We have classes all around the country. So please look there. And if you are looking for something in your heart while we're talking about community, if you have a community heart, please head over to givesingo.com/Greenwood, and you can read all about what the Greenwood Project is. And I would love to have your support. Basically, it's Second Amendment and firearms training meets community outreach, all smashed into one. And I think it's pretty cool what we're doing. And then we got great swag. So you can go over and get like your Purpose Over Popularity t-shirt at nootherchoice.com, the Harriet would have smacked the sugar honey iced tea out of you. Violence is a problem. Accuracy is a solution. All the things. I'm easy to find.
All right, guys, that is it. After this ends, you're going to be redirected if you want to stay on to the video that's debuting over on John Crump News. So stay on, and you'll be automatically redirected over there if you want to. And thank you so much, Kevin. We'll be back.